Let's get into the tape here a little bit. We're gonna start off with Lamical Perine. We got Anthony McFarland coming up after him. All right. So
So, I mean, if
guys,
you if
new
you want to take
feature here.
the lead, Matt, you can do that if you want. But yeah, we just kind
Okay,
of talk through anything that we see. We can play things back, so
that's cool.
it's pretty chill.
I learned how to super slow mo it on Vimeo, by the way.
Oh,
Look at
nice.
you.
Look at that.
There we go.
What buttons are those, Jared?
You have to hold shift and then use the arrow keys.
Oh, nice. Okay. It's different than YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, so this was one we could replay, just kind of take a look. And, it looks like we're seeing here some sort of a counter, possibly. I didn't really look quick enough yet, but it looks like you've got a pulling guard and maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, either a counter or power, but it looks like counter. And the leverage, it looks like he kind of read the outside guy. I mean, I would love to hear what you guys think, but it looks like he read kind of the linebacker coming up to that right edge and decided it was time to work back inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's working back inside leverage, that his pulling guard, wasn't able to, get a position where he could like work back inside that guard like that. And that's a hard thing to do, is to kind of cut back on a gap play.
Right. I mean, this is one where I think maybe he got nervous too quickly. And if he was just a little half second more patient, he would have came at least outside of there and got back to at least the line of scrimmage, if not a big play. Because if he goes between those two, he's got a shot.
I think you're absolutely right, because it's that lesson of maintaining your line. If he took another 2 steps forward, maybe, and had confidence that he could cut inside number 8, look where he sent, look where he sent that safety or that defensive back at the 28, right there. That defensive back's well outside.
Watch it again, full speed here.
Keep it in your right arm, Piron. Come on.
So he split out wide here up top. They split him out wide a lot, I noticed when watching him.
He is one of the he's not a huge name, but when it comes to some of the backs in this class, he's a much more natural receiver than some of the other guys.
Yeah, that's a great point about him.
Yeah, 40 receptions. I mean, that's, surprising when you look at, he's played all 4 years at Florida. His earlier years, he didn't get quite that number. He always had a few. He battled with Jordan Scarlett, but 40 is a pretty big number for college.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's counter.
Good
Yeah,
patience. Good patience there.
For sure. And especially where he has to kind of cross the quarterback's face and then work back behind the lead blocks like that.
Yeah, pauses and lets his blocks develop.
Yeah, that was the tight end that came around, isn't that?
Pitts.
Yeah. Yeah, 84.
Yep.
And he does a nice job there where when he changes direction, when he's in the backfield, you see that when he's in the backfield, he doesn't really jump or leap. It's just kind of a switch or a pivot with his feet. So he's efficient with that change of direction. And that's so important when there's, a lot of traffic getting backed up into the, near the exchange point.
Mm-hmm. And his shoulders are square too. That's kind of reminds me of Trent Richardson back at Alabama. He was really a shoulder square type of a player.
And you can see why that's important on this play. Mm-hmm. I mean, if he didn't have his shoulders square to begin that play, he doesn't bounce off this contact right there.
Yep. He does a good job of that.
That's one thing I really enjoy seeing out of running backs is, you see some guys that they're uber talented, but their feet go dead at contact at times. And being able to see him still continue to chop those legs, churn those legs, his feet go dead there. He's probably getting brought down. But continue to churn those legs, that's a good sign.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you see him here, he continues to head towards where I think he needs to on this play, where the soft spot is, even though, number 8's coming in through there, and there's another defender who's already coming through there a little bit earlier.
Yeah, good. Gets his pads down low. He's the lower guy here.
Yeah, for sure. And you see, and like Garrett noted, I mean, he keeps his feet moving. He attacks first with the pads. And I mean, you can see he has functional burst. I mean, he has NFL caliber burst. It's so he definitely has a place in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he lost some weight prior to this last year. He was like high 220s, and now he's back down to like 215s. So I think that's kind of helped him a little bit in that area.
It's a tough catch there.
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not many running backs in this class that can make a catch like that. I can
That's
name
true.
a few, but
There's a few receivers that can't make that catch in this class.
Quite a few.
yeah,
Because, I mean, away from your body like that on a slant, and you know you're going to take a hit.
Yep.
He made that look easy.
That's Patrick Queen in the middle there. He's a player too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, one quick question that I have for you, Matt. You know, when we see these guys, getting ready to make that jump to the NFL, a lot of times we're talking about, different blocking schemes. And a lot of NFL teams use a myriad of different blocking schemes within their playbook. But you have some that are more traditional zone, some that are more traditional gap. Does that factor for you? Which player goes to what specific scheme, or do you think that's a little bit overblown? Most backs can fit into most schemes regardless of how it goes. Where do you stand with all of that?
I'm still in the standpoint, maybe I'm old fashioned, but I'm still at the standpoint where it's if you only run gap, you probably may have a little bit of work to do because there's a lot of zone schemes, and a lot of teams use a healthy amount of zone, whereas few teams are like heavily weighted till gap. You know, the Bills, the Chargers, the Colts seem to be pretty good in that regard. So, but it takes some time to learn that. We saw Tevin Coleman. It took a few years for him to kind of develop in that regard. And we saw that Miles Sanders struggled a little bit last year early on because he wasn't great with zone runs. And so they gave him more gap, and he looked pretty good, as that started to go on. So that's an opposite style of running. Like you have to account for things, and you have to read things kind of in an opposite fashion. You have to kind of set things up in opposite fashion. And if you're not used to doing that, it shows up. I would love to go back to the previous play, if you don't mind, where he blocks. There's a play like, I think before.
block.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. Just to
He
get
cuts,
a chance
right?
to see. Yeah.
Kinda.
I mean, hey, he tries to get across there. I mean, he's a little too high, but
yeah.
the fact that he's that high on a big guy like that's not bad.
Right. And he went inside leg, which is what you need to go.
Yeah.
If you're going to cut.
And I mean, positive from this running play here is, I mean, he gets his legs caught up here at the line of scrimmage, but he still manages to get a couple yards because he's keeping his legs moving.
Yep, and that jump stop wasn't bad either. That's not a bad jump stop either.
Right.
Ooh, look at that.
And he noticed he really didn't have anywhere to go here, but he just puts his head down, goes north and south, and gets a couple.
That's a great point. And then go back to the jump stop one more time, because look how he kind of jumps forward to the jump stop, but then leaps away from 91. A lot of guys you'll see jump stop into the defender and go like a couple yards, but he only takes a yard and then jumps away quickly. So you see the awareness and the good position with his hands there. So that whole vision idea of being able to process quickly and make that contact and be aware enough with your feet, like, I know I jumped into that penetration. Now I have to jump away. And you see a lot of guys like Kenyon Drake I used to joke that, I mean, he's done a lot better, but you've seen him cut into the back sides of his blockers and knock himself backwards, onto his butt.
Yeah.
In Miami doing that, so.
That's one of my issues with Cam Akers this year, is I feel like he's not quick at processing if the play isn't designed how it should be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair assessment about him.
I'm surprised he got 2 yards there, to be honest. Just a lot of junk.
Yeah, but it's nice that he continues to kind of go outside and he's trying to get those linebackers to flow, and then he gets that kind of backside crease.
Mm-hmm. Good patience again.
Yeah.
Smart. That's why I like Perine. I mean, I think he has so many tools in his toolbox where he's not great at any one thing, but he's good at a lot of things here. And I think an NFL team's going to like that because he can just do a lot. You put him on the field, it's like, well, we can't not throw, or we can't not run this play. He can kind of do it all.
What's his size again?
He is. Where do I have him here?
Is he 215?
I think so.
I think he's in that range. Yeah. Let me look. I've got him somewhere. Oh, there he is. Yeah, 5'10", 216.
That's good size.
Yeah.
It's a good cutback. It's interesting that it looked like he planted on his inside foot to cut back in, which is a little unorthodox, but
Right there.
Yeah. Oh no. All right. He got his outside foot. I thought he was planting on his inside foot, which I was trying to figure out how he made that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and he's that guy to me that's like, I think, versus draft nicks or fantasy people. Fantasy people may like him less than the full draft nick crowd. And I've rated him lower, but what I've told people is like, he's the guy that the NFL is going to draft earlier because his upside may not be great, but they know exactly what they're getting out of this guy.
Mhm.
And if they need him to play, he's going to play well, but he's just not a guy that they're going to say, we feel comfortable about you being a starter long-term with us. But he could have a 10-year career with like 3 different teams and maybe even have like a couple seasons with 1,000 yards, just because you look at what he does. It's everything's pretty good and can get better if, even just, eyes on a swivel, being able to, make that nice little block on that quarterback run and find the open man there.
You run that one back. Yeah.
Yeah. That one there.
Now, this one I have a little bit of an issue with. I think he did a little too much dancing there. You have 1 yard to go. I would have much rather seen him lower the shoulders and just punch it in. I don't like seeing a lot of dancing around the goal line personally.
I agree, and he does it so early. He doesn't get close enough to the line to really set up anything. So like he's tipping off to the defenders who are not blocked where he's going. Like he could have gone another 2 steps.
Yeah.
And then
the
made
line.
his move. Yeah. And then maybe he has that open crease to cut back. And that's the difference between him, a guy like we just talked about, Chubb, or Frank Gore.
Yep. You have to press the hole to make the linebackers flow.
There's a play.
Too.
Making a play for your team there.
What?
Yeah.
But this is 4th and goal. You got to make a play, and I think it's a great play for the quarterback to even get the play off if you watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets this pass
right.
off, so
Yeah.
Give your guys a chance. 4th down.
Yeah, just heads up. And kind of nice position because he knows he's like kind of leaping back for that ball. I mean, he doesn't drift too much at that point. It's nice.
We haven't touched on a lot of the questions in here yet. Matt, if you're okay with answering
Please.
here, one of the guys asked, who do you think is the top back in this class?
I'm a J.K. Dobbins fan. I think
My dude. Yes. Yes. Take that, Nick.
Now, let me say this, and I don't mean just because Nick's my bud, but I've said this in a number of places. The best pure runner with the ball in his hand is Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
But the best all around back in my eyes in terms of if we're not
For
looking for a
fantasy.
specific team, run, catch, block, scheme independent. I think Dobbins gets the edge in that case.
Matt, you just moved up in my book. Just moved up.
So we're J.K. Dobbins admirers, eh?
That's right. That's
That
right.
that TCU game from last year was the first one I watched, and I was just like, I was so impressed with his footwork. I was so impressed with how he moved through traffic and how he could make some of those micro movements to kind of avoid defenders and process information.
Yeah, very elusive.
Yes. He kind of reminds me of like a faster Ray Rice, when Ray Rice was good back in the day. And I think that he has a shot to become a really good player. He can be a little undisciplined at times, but
for sure, a little inconsistent on some things, especially in pass protection.
Yeah.
Nice run.
Yes.
The ability to make the first guy miss.
And look at that little turn, just that little turn of the upper body. That's like a nice little micro movement there where he moves the ball away. Ezekiel Elliott's just killer at that. He is so good at making that quick little move like that. And that's why he often turns tough losses into gains, because he can keep defenders from getting a reach on him that should have gotten one.
No, one thing, if you play back again, so some backs, we talked about the freaking out, some backs will just get out of the way as quick as they can to avoid him, but then they'll run into this corner that's coming off the edge. So you wonder if he processes, I only need
step
to move
ahead
a little bit, a half a man maybe, and then go forward so I can avoid both guys. You wonder what they think. That's what I think. Because I know some guys will completely jump cut there, and then they'll just get tackled for no gain.
That's
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, you do it.
No, that's the chess versus checkers thing in my mind with some of the processing for these guys. Some of those guys are only one move, but then when there's guys that can string moves together because they were able to kind of see what was happening as opposed to just what was right in front of them, but a couple moves ahead, like you do in chess. And so, when you see guys that can process that, is always a plus.
Go back to the play because then look at just the pre-snap look of it, because this was something that I know Dan Hatman liked to point out a lot at the Scouting Academy. And you'll see, you look at from the right side of the center that you essentially have, like, I guess 4 guys on that side. And then maybe you could count the 5th if you count the Mike, who's kind of close enough to that hash, but let's just say 4. And he knows that kind of that bubble in terms of where there's, that free area between the defensive end and defensive tackle is going to get filled by that linebacker. It looks like number 8 there, Queen. And then you also still have that other defender off the edge outside of that defensive end who's also going to he looks like he's playing kind of tight. So I wouldn't be surprised if Perine's obviously assessing that pre-snap and looking and going, this is where we're running. So what do I have to account for? And I know my man here on the wing might be able to take this guy, but he might know him well enough to go, I'm going to have to be tight if I bounce outside this bubble where the defender gets through.
That's a great point.
What I like about Perine so far is he understands who he is. Like, he's not trying to always beat guys to the edge because he's not some super fast running back. He gets north and south when he needs to get north and south, and he gets positive yards. And that's
a great point, because and that's, I think, key about a lot of backs is that they don't know who they are. They think they're super stud athletes all the time.
And Matt, I know, I'm on this show, I talk about it all the time, but I know you don't hear it, but I'm anti David Montgomery despite being a Bears fan, because David Montgomery still thinks he's the most athletic guy on the field, and he's not.
He saw that graphic. He knows.
Yeah.
He's Frankenstein out there, man.
and you're right. He probably doesn't know who he is for sure. I think it's very symptomatic of that. Yeah, he gets downhill well on that. Just kind of sets that up.
Gets his pads down too.
The more I watch him, and I liked the potential of Jordan Scarlett early on going to Florida. He's great athlete out of high school, and he got into a little bit of trouble. But the more I watch Perine, the more I'm like, why didn't they give him more touches in that offense versus Scarlett? Because I feel like they would have won more games, or they would have been better. So, but that's a concern then. If he doesn't get, he never got 1,000 yards there, in a season. So, you wonder if the coaches didn't trust him, or, what the reason was.
Could it also be just as like a lot of the SEC teams in there? Nice catch, a nice transition. Look at the transition after the catch.
Beautiful.
And how quickly he gets upfield. He doesn't waste any time, and that's such an underrated thing. And the way that he even transitions to face the ball so that he's turning downfield.
It was kind of thrown a little bit above and behind him. That's tough.
Another great catch on that angle. But a lot of the SEC guys, I think they get recruited in a way they say, listen, you're going to play, and we're going to find a role for you. And I wonder if that's part of it too.
No, maybe. Yeah. I wish he had the ball in the other hand here.
We have a question from the chat here. Matt, what's the most important non-athletic trait that you look for?
Non-athletic trait that I look for. It's an underlying thread thing, but to me, again, it's about integrating the skills that you have, like knowing how to use them in very different ways. And so it's processing, it's processing the field and knowing how to do that. And it's kind of like, it's an intuitive type of thing, because, there's things that you're not coached to do, but you're coached maybe to do 3 or 4 different types of techniques, and then a situation comes up where you have to figure out a way to combine those 3 or 4 things, and it's not something that you've practiced. So I know that's not an easy answer, but it's the truth.
Yeah,
it was a good block there. The end came in the ref, the handoff, and he still got in the way. That was
you can just tell that he has He has high awareness. He has a high football IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's little subtle things that he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, even that block is nice, just to kind of squeeze him off into the, into his teammate there, so he could get some help if needed.
That's why I think, like, you were saying, Matt, an NFL team's going to draft him higher because they can trust him.
Yeah,
they know what he can do.
I think he's an early third-day pick. I mean, I think he could be a 4th or 5th round pick in this class. Whereas there are other guys who are more athletic than he, but probably will be 6th or 7th round.
So just to pump something that just released this evening, we released our nerd scores tonight, and basically what it is Matt, I'm sure you're not aware of it, but basically we had several analysts kind of watching these tapes, watching these films of these players, and then they would break down all of the individual attributes and give it a numerical grade. And then ultimately that way we had kind of a score sheet that we could release to everybody just based on their physical attributes, the tape stuff that we see versus, once landing spot and all that kind of stuff gets, it gets messy. So these kind of lock in place once the draft happens. But as of right now for our nerd score, Lamical Perine comes in as our 11th ranked running back with a score of 66.3. However, he is only 0.18 away from being our 9th ranked running back. So he's kind of in a little tier there.
That's crazy.
Between 9 and 11.
That's cool. That's cool that you guys have doing that.
Yeah, it should be neat. It'll be nice for us later on to be able to go back and say, 3 years ago we had this guy ranked with this numerical grade, but I'm telling you, in this class we have 3 guys that would top that guy, or something like that. So,
who's he around? We got Antonio Gibson,
Xavier Jones, Lamical Perine, and Michael Warren are all kind of right in that same territory.
Nice.
Solid backs. Gibson has high. He's tough to grade. He's got a high ceiling, I think.
I still know what position he plays.
Right.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Me neither. I thought it was going to be receiver, and by the time I finished studying, I was back at running back.
Yeah, I just thought he made more plays at running back. He looked more natural there.
And I think as evaluators, we're always going to be prone to screwing up how to grade a player like that or Tony Pollard because the low number of touches that they had.
Lynn Bowden's tough as well.
Yeah.
Matt, how do you compare some of these running backs as far as, where does competition come into it? Because obviously we have to grade into each player individually on their skill set. But does a guy playing in the SEC against those defenses of the Big Ten versus playing, in the MAC or, the Sun Belt, does that play any role factor for you? Or is it, I just look at the individual player and I kind of ignore the rest?
I would say I'm more towards the latter, but I do account for the former in the sense that, you want to see a guy's strength or contact balance against top end competition. You want to see, it's easier for you to see whether the guy actually has speed and acceleration when they're facing top end athletes. But I'm still kind of waiting for the combine for verification because, to me, trying to guess the speed of a player, I feel like I'm guessing the weight at a carnival, so it's, I don't think I'm very good at that. So I'd rather just let the times tell me that. And then I can do some investigative work if I think the start was bad or, there was some sort of issue that didn't match the field. But, I look for individual skills. And I think if you isolate them enough, you can account for, it doesn't matter whether the competition was good or bad or the stats were good or bad.
Yeah, Jared was going for a play there as a pass pro, and it was such a big gap. Yeah, this play here that, to me, he steps up and you want him to attack there, but he can't lunge because it's the biggest gap you've ever seen. If he misses, his quarterback screwed. So I think he steps up and he's like, okay, I just need to catch and get in his way because that's essentially like a 3 gap area.
He did his job.
That's a good point. And it's something that I think a lot of people miss when they evaluate, where they feel like they have to have a definitive answer and say, well, his technique wasn't good here.
Yeah, he ducked his head a little bit.
Yeah. But at the same time, that ducking of the head might have also occurred because he had to stop so quickly. We'd probably have to look for other exposures to see. And I don't remember what he does oftentimes as a as a blocker right off the bat, if that's a tendency of his or not. I'll look up in my notes in a bit.
Yeah. But, looks like they made a second half adjustment of chipping the end. Keeps chipping that end.
How many hours did the RSP take this year, Matt?
You mean just in March?
Yeah. When does the process of the RSP for the next seasons begin?
Yeah. It's I've watched a number of guys for next year already while I was doing it this year because I didn't know whether they were coming out or not. So I probably already have about 40 or 45 guys that I've watched a good bit of tape on. And then I'll probably, I used to start in July probably and took a good bit of time off, but I have a feeling this year I'm going to be starting probably after the draft immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sounds like you're going to be busy.
I am, but I'm trying to cut my process so that or make it more efficient so that the March isn't as crazy as it's been, and I think I've figured that out. So I'm hoping that I'll get more sleep and be able to take care of myself a little bit better these days, rather than trying to write 500 pages in 1 month, which is what I've been doing.
I get that LSU has a pretty good defense, but there's not much dog in him at the goal line.